And so it was 15 years ago that I uncovered that, hey, I could use an IRA or 401k. I can invest in real estate. And oh, by the way, if I structure things properly, I don't have to pay taxes.
Right.
So, at that moment, it was, my mind was absolutely expanded. It's like, wait a second, I can buy a single family rental. I can rent it out. The rental income comes back into my self-directed IRA. I pay no taxes. I sell it. I don't have to worry about a 1031 exchange. I don't have to worry about any tax liability. All the profits just go back into my retirement plan tax-free.
Welcome to the Threefold Real Estate Investing Podcast. This is the podcast where you'll not only learn how you can achieve massive success in multifamily real estate investing, but also how you can simultaneously pursue great relationships with your family and a better walk with God. You can achieve financial freedom through real estate investing without sacrificing the relationships that mean the most to you. Now, here's your host, Lee Yoder.
Welcome back, Threefold listeners. We've got another great guest for you today, covering an interesting topic today with John Bowens. He's joined us from Cleveland, Ohio, my old stomping grounds. We went to college up at BW, so John and I were talking a little bit about that. But real quick, a little bit about John, then we'll bring him in. He is one of the most sought after and respected educators in the self-directed IRA industry. We've got a lot of people within the Threefold community that have invested through their IRAs, and several of them have used Equity Trust, and that's who John is with. He's the head of education and investor success at Equity Trust. He draws from his 20 years of real estate industry experience and his experience as an active real estate investor. John contributed to the book Self-Directed IRAs, Building Retirement Wealth Through Alternative Investing, awesome, with Equity Trust Company. He's been on different podcast radio shows, including the Rich Dad Radio Show. That's an awesome one. That's a great one. And he got his bachelor's degree. He left Cleveland, went down to OU. So still an Ohio guy. John, thanks for joining us today. Great to have you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Lee. Glad to be here and excited to share some of my experiences and some of the experiences of the customers that I've worked with over the years here at Equity Trust.
Yeah, I'm excited to get into it too, John. Like I said, I've worked with your company, have some of our partners, our investors are happy clients of yours. So yeah, we'll get into more of that. John, can you tell us first, how did you get into the real estate industry? And then maybe it sounds like you're an active investor too. Maybe just tell us a little bit about that. But how'd you get into all that?
Yeah, absolutely. One of my best friends growing up, his father and grandfather owned a lot of real estate. My cool. Family never was involved in real estate, but just by nature of this relationship with this friend of mine, I got involved in real estate and I started working for his father and grandfather, more on the construction side.
Okay.
But what was great is I got exposure to a mom and pop real estate company. And I learned about things such as property management. I learned about things like construction management. I learned, how to fix up houses and commercial properties. And then I also learned about the business side. And I was watching them, I'll say, pay a lot of money in taxes at times.
Sure.
At sometimes not paying as much in taxes, but in other cases, paying a lot of money in taxes, especially when they would sell a property and they couldn't do like a 1031 exchange. And I learned about all of that. And I would oftentimes ask them when I was in school. So I was studying traditional finance. And so everything that I learned academically was take your IRA, 401k, and other retirement plan and invest in the stock market, invest in mutual funds, or, you hear a lot of people call it the 60-40 model, 60% public equities, 40% fixed income. And so I oftentimes would ask my friend's father and grandfather, why don't you have IRAs, 401ks, and other retirement plans? And they would say, well, we don't believe in those because we believe in real estate. And with an IRA or 401k, you can only invest in the stock market. And I always scratched my head. I was paying thousands of dollars, academically to be trained on finance. And no one ever told me that I could use an IRA, 401k, or other retirement plan to invest in real estate. So 15 years ago, I met Equity Trust, and I actually met our company founder, Dick Desich, who's widely known as the pioneer of the self-directed IRA industry. And he became my mentor. And so it was 15 years ago that I uncovered that, hey, I could use an IRA or 401k. I can invest in real estate. And oh, by the way, if I structure things properly, I don't have to pay taxes.
Right.
So, at that moment, it was, my mind was absolutely expanded. It's like, wait a second, I can buy a single family rental. I can rent it out. The rental income comes back into my self-directed IRA. I pay no taxes. I sell it. I don't have to worry about a 1031 exchange. I don't have to worry about any tax liability. All the profits just go back into my retirement plan tax-free. So, again, 15 years ago is when the journey started for me. I obviously naturally began investing in real estate with my self-directed retirement plans, private money lending, owning real estate, selling real estate, making tax-free profit, and along the way, having the opportunity to train a lot of investors as well.
That's awesome. Yeah. Yeah. I couldn't help during your story, John, to think like your friend, like you had a rich dad. You had, the whole Robert Kiyosaki story, right? He had a dad that, did very well, but was a professor and made good money, but paid a lot in taxes. And then when the job was over, like he was just there left to wind down his retirement and hope it would last him. Meanwhile, he had a buddy who had a dad that was buying like grocery stores and stuff and building up all this passive income and like, buying assets that were going to pay him for the rest of his life. And it's like, you got to see that side too. But there were even some things that kind of that rich dad for you didn't know. And that there were ways maybe to be even better with keeping more of your money and setting even up a better retirement. So really, really cool story though. Thanks for setting that up. So John, as we jump into this, let's just maybe have like a model person. Okay. So somebody that wants to invest with me, they say, Lee, what's your minimum to invest? For us, it's been 25,000, might move that up to 50,000, John. So someone says, well, man, I've only got 10, 15 grand. So I guess I can't invest with you. And I might say, well, you have a IRA? Oh yeah. I got hundreds of thousands of dollars in my IRA, but can't invest that with you. And I said, well, actually, if you talk to Equity Trust, maybe you can do that. What's that call going to sound like? So maybe build that out for us a little bit, John. When a potential investor of mine calls you and says, John, how do I do this? How does it work? What are you going to tell them?
Yeah, absolutely, Lee. I'm sure you get that question all the time, which is, can I actually do this? Is this legal?
Yeah.
And the answer is absolutely. A self-directed IRA investing in real estate is really no different than the IRA or retirement plan that you might have now. The difference is the company that is your custodian. So most traditional financial institutions aren't going to allow you to invest in real estate. In most cases, they can't be incentivized or they can't be rewarded for you holding real estate in the IRA. They're not going to advise you to do so. So that's where you need to make the decision to move your money into another financial institution's hands. In this case, it could be Equity Trust that will allow you to take full control. Now, the beauty of a self-directed IRA and the way that Equity Trust works, and to answer your question, Lee, with reference to how this sounds or how it feels, the first step of the process for investors is to open and fund an account. And we take the customer through that process. Of course, prior to that, answering all their questions so that they understand how it works, what the process is, what are the fees, all the very important decision-making points. We would go through that with that customer over the phone. And then from there, they're going to direct their funds. Now, we are a directed custodian. We don't provide any type of legal advice. We don't sell investments. We don't recommend. We don't endorse. So we take an agnostic approach, which is good. Investors want to know that the custodian that they're working with is not going to be biased. So we're not going to take the approach of doing due diligence on an investment. The customer has the opportunity to do all of that. They move their money over. And then when they're ready to direct the money out for an investment, they simply log into an online portal. It's a digital interface. They upload their documents for the investment, and then Equity Trust wire transfers the funds out for the investment. One of the questions I get frequently is when I send my money out to a private investment, whether it's buying a property, making a private money loan, or I think in the case of your example, Lee, investing in a fund. So I'll use that as an example. If the IRA money goes out to an investment fund, maybe to buy an apartment building or maybe single family residential properties, whatever it is, it's a fund, a pooled fund with many other investors. The money leaving the IRA and being sent to the fund does not trigger any type of taxable event or any penalties. That's one of the most common questions I get is, well, John, I was told that if I take money from my IRA and buy property
take it out,
or
lend
it out. Right, exactly. But that's not the case with the self-directed IRA. So as long as you do everything properly, when money leaves the account, you're making an investment. It's just like buying a stock or mutual fund. When you buy a stock, cash leaves the account, and in return for that stock return for that cash is a stock certificate. It's the same concept when you buy real estate.
Same thing we do. Yeah. We tell our investors you're buying shares in this LLC, which is buying the apartment building. So it's just same thing. You're buying shares in this LLC, just like you'd buy shares of Apple. It's really the same idea.
Exactly. And it's important to know that there's no taxes or penalties. You're not borrowing against the account. Now, if you took money from the account personally and then went out and bought a property personally or invested in a company personally, there would be a penalty if you're under 59.5 and taxes. But that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about actually opening a self-directed IRA, rolling money over, transferring money, and then executing on the investment that makes sense for that individual.
Exactly. So John, back to my example. So if somebody they say, Lee, I've only got $15,000 in cash, can't invest with you. They say, oh, well, wait, I got $500,000 with Charles Schwab or Edward Jones or Fidelity or whatever. And they decide, well, I'm going to take $100,000 and I'm just going to transfer it over to Equity Trust I'm going to open up an account and fund it with $100,000 from my Fidelity account. Is there a penalty there, John? Anything? They can just move that 100 right from Edward Jones right over to Equity Trust and nothing happens?
That's right. It's known as a transfer, or if it's like a 401k or 403b or a 457 deferred compensation, that's known as a rollover. So there are rollovers and transfers. And as long as the money is never going through your personal bank account, that's the key here. You never want the money to pass through your personal bank account because that could trigger a tax and penalty if you're under a certain age. Generally, that's 59.5. But as long as you transfer or roll over that money directly into the self-directed IRA, then there's no taxes or penalties. And that's part of our job as a custodian, is providing information and education around how to do this. And much of this heavy lifting is done by your custodian, in this case, Equity Trust. So when you're ready to do a transfer, let's say, use the example of Edward Jones. If a customer has an Edward Jones IRA and they want to transfer a portion of that or all of it to Equity Trust, we're going to open an account. We're going to send a request to Edward Jones that's signed off on by the client. And Edward Jones is going to release the money and send a wire transfer directly to Equity Trust. Right. And the key here is that you have cash being transferred over for your intended investment, and the money is never passing through your hands. Another question I get frequently is, do I have to move all of it? You don't. If you just want to move a portion of it to get started because you want some diversification into real estate, you can do that. And then if you want to move more over at a later date, you always have the opportunity to take advantage of that. Yeah.
And back to your point too, John, I mean, I've talked with potential investors and they go and talk to their advisor at any of the kind of the big name money managers, whatever. And hey, interested in real estate, the answer is like, we don't do that. That's not part of what we do. We can't put money there. So a lot of times it is, you are going to have to transfer that money out. So if you want to diversify, if you say, I got $500,000 in here, it's all in the stock market, or it's all, it's that 60-40 portfolio. We got 60% in stocks, 40% in bonds. Both of them kind of stunk it up last year. A little bit worried about how they're going to do this year. I feel like real estate is a better long-term investment. You are going to have to transfer some of that money out and you put it in a self-directed account. Now, John, you guys, there must be a reason you're allowing people to invest in whatever they want. Is it just an annual fee? I know there are fee-based wealth advisors or whatever. They can get you into some real estate. So I'm guessing that's kind of more how you guys operate, John. You're more of a fee-based wealth manager.
So as a custodian, thank you for the question. You bring up a good point, which is there's a key difference between wealth management, call it financial advisory, and a custodian like Equity Trust. So as we are not advisors or wealth management consultants, we're not going to sell investments to customers. That may or may not make sense to them. And I think you brought up a great point there, Lee, which is folks may go to their traditional wealth management consultant, financial advisor, right? Usually they're called financial advisors. And they might be compensated based on transactions, or they might be compensated based on fees. They refer to that as a fee-based planner, which is they look at your assets under management, so the total portfolio balance, and then they assess a fee to that. That may or may not work for you. And it really depends on your goals and interests. What I think is important to take away is whether you're making money or losing money, they're making money, right? They may not be making as much of it, but they're still making money. And they can only sell you certain types of investments, right? That they're selling specific investments or portfolios and there are only certain ones that they can sell you. They can't offer you a private real estate investment in most cases. Why? Because they're not incentivized to do so, or it doesn't fall under the purview of their financial institution.
Sure.
Now, that's not necessarily a bad thing. I certainly don't want to be taken as disparaging to the financial advisory community. I work with lots of financial advisors and planners across the country. I have a great relationship with them. In fact, there are many of them out there that are open to these private assets because they understand that it's not going to be 100% of the retirement portfolio. Maybe their client is only going to move 15 or 20% over into get some access to private assets. And they're okay with that. And then they manage the other 80%. So what I would encourage folks to do is not enter into an adversarial relationship with your financial advisor, but I call it an inquisitive relationship. Ask them questions. Some of those questions might be challenging, right? But that's what they're there for. They're there to help counsel you on what's in your best interest. And if private real estate investing is in your best interest, then they should ultimately help you with that process. And the last thing that I'll mention, Lee, with respect to that is when you're working with a financial advisor, you might want to ask the question with respect to how they make money, and then their educational background on IRAs and other retirement plans. And some, just like anything else, some are better than others. In fact, I have a YouTube video where I talk about the 5 questions to ask a financial advisor or financial planner. That can be really helpful to folks. And then as far as our fees are concerned, because we're a custodian, we charge a flat annual fee based on the portfolio balance in the account. It's a sliding tiered scale. So for example, if you have an account between $100,000 to $200,000, you pay an annual maintenance fee of $500. There's no additional transaction fees, record keeping fees. You get access to your account online. You call in, you talk to one of our associates. We don't charge any fees above and beyond that. You might have a wire fee occasionally here and there, but for the most part, that fee is going to cover you and all the services for your account.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, John, I appreciate you laying that out. And again, yeah, me too. I mean, I'm never trying to tell people to get all their money out of the stock market, get it out of the, U.S. Treasury, stuff like that. Absolutely not. But I do think people should have exposure to real estate. And I do think they should diversify a little bit. If you think you're diversified just because you own a bunch of different stocks, that's probably not good diversification, not good enough, in my opinion. So I'm right there with you, John. And I think really what we're advocating for, I think, is just people take a more active role in their investing.
Yes.
And that's, it's a lot of, I think people listening to the show and shows like this, that's what they're interested in doing. They're interested in being active, or they wouldn't be, listening to an investing show. And so that's what they want to do. And when you take funds and put it into a self-directed account, you're obviously saying, I want to direct some of these funds. I want to get into real estate. So thanks for setting that up for us, John. So once they do that, get their money into an account, get a couple hundred grand over. So they say, hey, I want to diversify with this money. Now I can start directing it. You told us how that's going to work and the fees involved and all that. I want to talk just a little bit, John, then how does it work? Because once it comes through, and like I said, we've done this, and what I'll say on our end, what we know as the difference and what our investors experience is that when we send distributions and our investors make profit, or when we sell a property and they make a big chunk of profit, our investors who are investing their own cash or through an LLC, it's just a pass-through LLC. So it's like they're investing cash. They're going to pay taxes on that money, and it's ordinary income. It's, it is passive income, and we've got some depreciation. We can go against passive income, but when they make that big chunk, it's ordinary income. It goes on top of what they're making. They're going to pay taxes on it. Now, it's long-term capital gains if we're waiting, to sell, things like that, but they're paying their tax bracket taxes on that income. The money that goes to our investors who are investing through a self-directed IRA account with equity trust, it's a little bit different, right, John?
So to give you an example, Lee, of how it works with a self-directed IRA, from a tax exempt perspective, and you'll hear me say this a lot, compounding interest in the absence of taxation. Mm-hmm. And so I'll give you a personal example. So I made a private money loan to an investor in 2022. It was a $100,000 loan, and I partnered 2 of my self-directed accounts. I have both a Roth and traditional account. And so I partnered these 2 accounts together. I made a private money loan to an investor. They bought a house, fixed it up, and sold it in about 8 months. And for that $100,000, they paid me interest, of course. And that interest came out to be about 9%. Okay. And so when the property sold, I got my $100,000 back. And then I got about $9,000 in profit.
Nice.
That was interest. Now, because that's in my self-directed IRA, that's tax-free. All right.
Right.
Tax
Yep.
deferred for a portion of it because it's traditional. And then Roth accounts are totally tax-free. So it's tax-free coming back into the account. I'll never pay taxes on that money ever again. Either way, tax deferred account or tax-free Roth, in that year, 2022, I paid 0% tax on that $9,000 in profit. And that's really key here, because what that allows me to do is leverage compounding interest in the absence of taxation. It has an amplifying effect on my long-term compounding effects.
Right.
And ultimately what that does is it helps my wife and I get to our retirement goals and our financial goals in a shorter period of time. So when people stop me at seminars and they say, what do you do? I tell them, I help folks get to their retirement goals and their financial goals in a shorter period of time.
Nice.
Usually it's then, well, how do you do that? Well, you got to have a self-directed IRA and you got to have an investment strategy. So in terms of investing in properties, investing in loans, investing in real estate partnerships, things of that nature, you have the IRA tax exempt status. There are some nuances around retirement plans when investing in certain types of investments that could trigger a tax. But if you're structuring things properly and you're following all the rules and guidelines, you should be operating in a tax deferred or tax-free capacity at all times.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely, John. I mean, and that's just a nice little example of making $9,000, obviously great return in 8 months. For our investors, hopefully, and certainly, people that invest in real estate in the past few years have done even better than this, but, kind of in general, in 5 to 7 years, we should double our investors' money. So if you put in 100 grand, 5 to 7 years, you're turning that into 200. And that 100 that you made, I mean, if you're getting taxed on it at 20, 25%, you're going to be left with 80, 80 to 75,000 to 85,000, or 75,000 to 80,000. And that's what you get to go invest. So now you get to go invest 180 or 175 versus if it's in your Roth, you have the full 200,000 to go invest. So that's what you're talking about, John, like that next investment. Now I'm doubling 200 instead of doubling 175, right? And then the next time doubling 400 instead of 350 or wherever we're getting to, right? So, I mean, it's going to really add up over time. And that's what we're talking about. We're talking about retirement. We're talking about building that retirement that you want to live on when you're not wanting to work anymore.
That's right. It's, when you said that, Lee, it made me think of the rule of 72 for anyone out there that's not familiar. The rule of 72 is this: you take 72 and you divide it by your annual return on investment. And that will give you the number of years it's going to take to double your money. So for example, let's say I buy a property for 100,000 and I sell it for 150,000. Just for ease of math, let's say I make $50,000 in profit. Okay. So I make call it a 50% return on investment. But if we do that outside of our IRA, we have to pay taxes on that amount, right? So let's say that we only, after taxes are paid, we only get to keep, let's say, 30,000. So that's a 30% return on investment. See, we have to factor in taxes paid on our annualized return on investment. So if we take 72 and we divide it by 30, that's going to get us what? It's going to get us, call it 2.5. So it's going to take us 2.5 years to double our money. That's pretty good. I'm good with that. But if we do that same investment in an IRA structured properly, we save, call it $20,000 in taxes, giving our example. So now we take 72 divided by 50. So now we're doubling our money in just over a year's time.
1.5. Yeah. Or 1.5.
We'll call it 1.5.
Sure. Yep.
And so we can double our money faster if things are structured properly. We can double our money faster when we're using a self-directed retirement account.
Yep. Yeah. And when you do that 3 or 4 times, you can see how that saving a year each time it adds up. Really good stuff. And why not? It's an extra step. It's getting into that account, getting into a Roth and directing it from there. Hey, Threefold listeners, just want to take a quick second here to promote our sponsor, a company that I'm a big fan of, done a lot of business. I'm a very happy customer of Prominent Title Agency. They are a full service title and escrow company licensed in Ohio, Kentucky, Indiana, Tennessee, Michigan, and Florida. They handle commercial transactions of all types and sizes, including multifamily, retail, industrial, hotels, medical buildings, restaurants, gas stations, golf courses. They are very experienced and efficient in handling large portfolios, including multiple properties and or multi-states, as well as entity transfers in Ohio. My guy over there is Rob Calabrese. He is the Division Director for Prominent Title Agency's Commercial Real Estate Division. Being a licensed attorney and title agent in Ohio and Kentucky, Rob has strong knowledge of the complex world of commercial real estate. He also offers legal services in all aspects of commercial real estate. Guys, I've worked with Rob a lot. We're getting a deal under contract now, and I told the broker, I said, man, I really want to work with Prominent Title. Just trust those guys over there. They're great. They're quick. Love working with those guys. Now, back to the show. What I'd like to ask you, John, as we kind of wrap it up here, with your experience working with so many investors, educating so many investors, what would you say is the key ingredient to being a successful real estate investor?
The key is, in my experience, as an investor, as well as observing lots of investors across the country, I do a lot of seminars that I speak at. And so I see folks that sometimes will fall victim to trying too many different strategies, maybe even going to too many different courses and workshops, instead of finding a strategy that works for them in their market and then deploying that strategy. I always caution folks, for example, short-term rentals are really, really popular right now. And by all means, that could be a really good investment strategy for you. It could also be a very bad investment strategy for you if you don't know what you're doing.
Yeah.
And so, stick to something that you feel confident in and that you're also passionate about.
Right.
So long-term rentals, we're very passionate. We've gotten good at it. We stay focused on that. So that's what I encourage folks to do is find a strategy, build processes and procedures and standard operating procedures around it, and execute and run it like a business. Make sure to run it like a business. That was one of the things Robert Kiyosaki mentioned on the podcast. Is he said, real estate is a business. Yes, you're investing, but you need to treat it like a business. So that's what I encourage folks to do. That doesn't mean don't try new things. Our philosophy is try something new every single year, but don't rely on that trying something new as ultimately feeding the family and allowing us to live our life, right?
Yep.
That's something that, could be make or break. It could be something that ends up being very successful, but if it's not successful, we're not going to lose our shirt.
Yeah, couldn't agree more, John. It's easy to have that shiny object syndrome and see people that are doing so well in short-term rentals, but you got to remind yourself, most likely, unless they kind of got lucky, time the market or whatever, the market's going crazy. It's not anymore, but you look over there and you see them doing it, but you don't realize, but they've been doing it for 10 years. They're doing so well because they've been doing it for 10 years. So for you to jump in and think you're going to do that, no. And if you've been in long-term rentals for 10 years, that's why you're good at that, because you've been doing it for 10 years. So really good point there, John. Wait, you're married, don't have kids yet, John. You got some dogs, got some, what do they call them? Furry kids or whatever that's called. But John, I know you're, maybe you're gonna be a family man one day. And you've educated so many. What would you say, John, is a key ingredient for, while investing in real estate, like you are as well? How do you make sure you're having success outside of that, and even outside of your corporate career, John? What are some things you can pass on, maybe a key ingredient to making sure you're keeping your priorities straight?
Yeah, and this is something I had to work through quite a few years ago, and it was like a lot of folks, it's very, very hard. It's very challenging. I have a ton of sympathy and empathy for those out there, especially right now during high inflationary times, economic uncertainty, for the folks that have 3, 4, 5. I was at a seminar this past weekend with a guy who has 6 children. And gosh, I can't imagine what it's like trying to run a business and put food on the table and all that. It's really, really challenging. And what I've done in my approach, and I stole this from Jeff Bezos of Amazon. He talks about this work-life harmony. He doesn't call it work-life balance. He calls it work-life harmony. And not that I advocate for Jeff Bezos by any means. It was just something he said, and it kind of stuck with me.
Sure.
And so what we try to do is make it more a part of our lifestyle. So our work professionally and investing, it's part of our lifestyle. And having priorities, of course, is very, very important. And sometimes that does mean, logging on at midnight or 2 o'clock in the morning, to get something done. Sometimes we do have to make those sacrifices. But we try not to sacrifice the important parts of life. We try to find other areas where we can sacrifice when we need to
Yep.
So, that we're not missing out on those, incredible life opportunities and moments that, you just can't get back.
Yeah, man, absolutely. I mean, yeah, there's going to be some sacrifice, especially if you want to, achieve some great results. But I think, yeah, what you're saying there, making sure there's harmony there. I think being on board, having your spouse on board with it, talking through it first and coming to a conclusion together. Hey, here's what we're willing to sacrifice. We are willing to sacrifice some time at night or whatever. This is how it's going to work. That's really good, John. I appreciate that. Well, hey, this has been good, John. Before I let you go, I always like to ask my guests, how might my listeners and I be praying for you in the coming weeks?
Great question, Lee. I have not been asked that question. I would say, don't pray for me. I'd say, pray for, the people running this country. Pray for the doctors and the folks out there that are keeping people safe.
Sure.
From an investing perspective, pray for the attorneys out there, the title companies, pray for the lawmakers, right? Pray for all those people because, if they're doing a good job and they're making good decisions, we should all be happy too.
Yeah. And it allows us to invest and continue to having things like a self-directed IRA account that are good things that allow people to make good investment decisions and retire well. Yeah. Great prayer there, John. We'd be happy to pray for that alongside you. Hey, real quick too, before I let you go, trust SEC or etc.com. I know that. And then I know I'll put your links in for Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn. But that's the best place to send people, John.
That's right. Yeah. Trustetc.com is our website. And then for folks that want to learn more, they can also check us out on YouTube. Just go to Equity Trust Company on YouTube. We have lots of video training on there from everything from houses to funding real estate funds to private money lending, joint ventures. What is an IRA? How does it work? Roth versus traditional. So I always encourage folks to go to our YouTube channel to learn more, expand their mind. And then if they want to reach out and have a conversation, we're here to help you with that too.
Perfect. Great. Awesome. Thanks so much, John. Appreciate you coming on and educating us about self-directed IRAs and what it can do for somebody in their retirement. I love the idea, what you said, helping people get to their retirement goals quicker with self-directed IRAs. It's a great thing. I hope I can do that as well. I hope, teaming up, we can do that for people. So thanks for coming on, John. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Lee.
Thank you for joining us for another great episode. I hope you'll take action on what you've learned today. If you enjoyed today's show, please consider leaving Lee a 5-star rating and review. And check him out on threefoldrei.com. Until next time, 1 Timothy 6:17.